Hello and welcome to The Leather Worker and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. We are now on the second tranche of core settlement crafting locations, and the Leather Worker is our armor orientated one. I talked about how you unlock this in the Skinnery, but I'm going to just reiterate the key points. You get this from this endeavour down here. It costs 3 hide and an organ, so you need to be happy with where you are with your current armour before you're going to spend this. And actually I would recommend you have a fair bit of hide stockpiled, or you've had a hunt with a good hide drop, for reasons we'll get into very shortly. The main times that I will get the Leather Worker open is when I've finally got ammonia. You can get ammonia in a few different ways. You can get it from the White Line as a drop during the hunt. You can get it from the Gorm via one of the Gorm's AI cards, or you can just innovate it the old-fashioned way. And sometimes you may have to do that because ammonia is a progression critical innovation. This isn't something you can be like, oh, I'll get it when I feel like it. You are going to be kind of capped on how far your power level can progress without leather, because not only is leather itself the start of the mid-game armor progression, it's also used in many other crafting recipes that you'll find around the game. So, important, vital location. Ideally, you have this open before the Phoenix starts turning up, because it's very helpful to take on the Phoenix. So that's roughly a timeline goal, but you may not always get there. We'll start with a look now at the Leather Worker with this, our endeavour. As I said, this requires ammonia, so this is why there's no point unlocking this location until you have this endeavour. And it allows us to spend a endeavour and any number of hide to add an equal number of leather strange resources to the settlement storage. So this is a reflection of the harvest ritual on the stone circle. They're both doing the same thing, which is allowing you to convert any number of one resource into an equal number of a different resource at the cost of an endeavour. So the main trick here is to try and be as efficient as you can by stockpiling hide to a fairly large amount, so you can do a load of hide into leather very quickly. And if we just get rid of the menu here, upgrading monster hide to leather is something you should just be doing whenever you have a spare endeavour, or when you've stockpiled, because leather counts as a hide anyway, so you can just still use this as a normal hide, because it's not much more expensive. If you made like 10 leather with one endeavour, this is a hide and a tiny bit of an endeavour, like a tenth of an endeavour, whereas this is just an endeavour. So don't get hung up on not spending your leather in your stockpile if you need a hide. It's still fine to do it, okay? This is not much more valuable than this when it comes to resource costs. It is, of course, more valuable in a general kind of better things want leather. So that's it. That's our endeavour. There's no constructing of new settlement locations off this. That is a terminus on our armour route. Any better armour we'll be looking for now will be need to gain via either the weapon crafter, which will then let us step up to the blacksmith, or via monsters that you encounter in Node 3 and Node 4. Which is, Node 3 is Phoenix, Node 4 is currently not in KDM Simulator, not in the core game. There's only one Node 4 monster we have released, and that's the King. Let's go take a look at the gear then, shall we? It's not going to take too long. We have exactly 7 pieces of gear to go through. So, here we are. We'll start with the leather armour. This is the leather mask. It costs a leather and a scrap, so pretty cheap. It gives you 3 armour points. All of leather gives you 3 armour points and has the armour set and leather keywords. Leather's a material keyword that doesn't have too much interaction. It has 2 affinities. This down red is better than this up blue. for reasons we'll talk about when we come to builds. And very straightforward, when you depart, gain +2 insanity, so it lets you take a survivor who's got no insanity, dress them up in leather, and then when they go out, they're going to, have a little bit of protection on the hunt for their brain. And notably, if you're at 0, this only puts you to 2, so it doesn't automatically make you insane. So if you're trying to avoid having a fully insane hunt party, because say you pick Protect the Young, and feat is really bad for a Protect the Young, settlement, if they're all insane. So this is a way of just dressing someone up and saying, hey, you're on tank duty today, or you're the one who's going to get us through all the really scary scenarios where we encounter a bunch of stone feet. Then we have the arm piece. So leather bracers. This is a very good affinity. It connects to monster grease. And also very straightforward ability. When you depart, gain +2 survival. This costs a leather and hide, so it's a little bit more expensive than the mask, but it's still very affordable, a very good cost. And this +2 survival when departing, you should think of it as essentially it's taken the rawhide gloves over here and the rawhide boots and combined their bonuses together in one and given it a better affinity. So it's a very basic piece of gear, but it does a really good job. Leather cuirass. Okay, so we'll notice we've got no abilities, but we do have the inverse of this over here, mask and cuirass. So you'll often find in builds you could either put the cuirass above the leather mask if you need a blue, or you'll put the cuirass below the leather mask if you need a red. So that's quite a nice little bit of interaction. Sometimes you could even lay things out a little bit more differently. If you wanted to put a gear here and here for connections, you could have them next to each other. So lots of options, lots of modular positioning in the gear grid for leather. There's not really a correct place to put the leather mask and cuirass, although we will see the most typical examples when we get to the builds. Leather skirt. Again, this is a really basic piece of gear. It's not fancy what it's doing. It's giving you armor points. It's giving you a down green, which connects to this, the unofficial 6th part of leather armor. And that's it. This is a good affinity. It's not the best affinity for green, that's the best, but it does a solid job. And it's also very cheap. It costs a single leather for your waist, which is fantastic. Oh yeah, sorry, this is a leather and a bone, if I remember correctly. I think it's just there. We'll see afterwards if I was right. And then, last of all, we have leather boots. This is the most tactically interesting of all of the pieces of gear. It does the most work, and essentially it is because of this puzzle ability. So if you get this left green and right green connected, and you can do the left green with your leather bracers over here, and you can do the right green with monster grease, then at the end of your act you may move one space. So important to note, this is not a movement, so it's not affected by anything that drops your movement. You're going to get this move one space regardless. So for example, if you've got a steel shield, which is dropping your movement by, I think 3, it drops it by. It might be 2. Can't remember off the top of my head. But you'll also be able to move one space afterwards. It also allows you to do some neat little repositioning things where you get into the blind spot and attack, and then both blind spots are occupied, but you can step backwards one to allow another survivor to get into the blind spot. This is an ability that's easy to forget and doesn't do a huge big thing on the battlefield, but it gives you incremental tiny little tricklings of value. If you need to catch up with a monster, you've now got effectively 6 space movement to get towards it rather than the usual 5. And you can also do some tricks with leather boots to allow you to reposition after firing a bow. And even if you're looking to do dash cancels, which is where you dash out of the monster's range, you can use the leather boots extra point to put you just right on the edge of where the monster is. So if it targets you, then it won't hit you if it goes full movement if you dash. So a lot of little neat tricks to be done with the boots. It's this thing that just keeps on giving, and I like it a great deal. Then we have our first shield. Round leather shield is one of the best pieces of core gear, because it's your first shield, and well, it gives one defense, one armor to all hit locations, and it also gives you access to block, which is fully described here, but essentially it is spending an activation to ignore one hit on the next attack against you. So this makes this an excellent tanking weapon. And it is a weapon, which means that, hey, it works with blood paint, and it also has its own weapon proficiency, which we're going to go and take a look at the same time as we look at the at whips as well. The downside of the round leather shield is, in order to advance shield proficiency, you need to be wounding with it, and this is a terrible attack profile. 1 speed with an 8+, so you're hitting 30% of the time, and you only have 1 strength on the weapon, which means that your survivor needs to be putting in a lot of work on the strength side if you don't want to make this chore of hitting heavily laborious. Normally you'll find the round leather shield is paired with another weapon that has better strength, so that the person training shield proficiency will smack the monster until they score their wound, and then they'll switch up to their alternate weapon. The round leather shield is also very good at making not so great armor sets last longer, because if you're lacking in armor points, you can go the distance if you get this extra 5 armor points from the round leather shield. You'll even find some builds that don't wear armor at all because they're not allowed, but they can still wear shields. And there's a joking, fun sort of turtle build where all you do is you put a bunch of shields into your gear grid, 3 or 4 of them, and it gives you more space, but you still get a ton of armor points at the cost of not having access to a set bonus. But you've got multiple mini set bonuses on your shields. It's a great weapon. It's expensive, for sure. It costs a leather, a bone, and a hide. That is a steep cost, but it is worth paying. And you're going to probably craft 2 or 3 of these along the way. So it's a fantastic piece of gear. Last of all, we have the Hunter Whip. I looked at this a little bit in the Skinnery section. It is a whip. Whips have a few issues in the core game, but not on the ability front. This is an amazing ability. Perfect hit, discard a mood in play. That can be a lifesaver in certain situations, and it is also a way of controlling moods that you can take on hunts without having to worry about your whisker heart being noisy, which sometimes that can be a concern. So solid. The attack profile it's a whip, so this is to be expected to be a little low on the strength front. 3 speed, 6+ accuracy. That's within the ranges of what you would like to see. And as I said, 3 strength is a little low. You want to consider maybe combining this with a lucky charm, because it wants 2 blue affinities anyway, and that'll give you a pseudo quote-unquote strength increase by increasing your luck threshold, or you can get a monster tooth necklace and get that active. I am of the opinion you shouldn't be taking the whip out if you do not plan to activate this ability. It's not good enough for just the weapon profile in its own, and as you'll see when we look at whip proficiency in a moment, it's not. You're not picking a whip just for training up whips, unless you think whips are cool, and then you're right, because they are cool. Whips are cool. So we'll look at the set bonus, then we'll look at the 2 proficiencies, and finally we'll go on to some builds. And yeah, this is a short one, which is just as well because I'm already starting to lose my voice. Set bonus, very straightforward. 1 to all hit locations, meaning you have a grand total of 20 armor points, and you get to ignore bash. So bash is something that some monsters do, and be aware bash is not the same as knockdown. You're immune. You ignore bash, right? That means the bash is still happening, but it doesn't do anything to you. But you do not ignore knockdown from, say, collisions or other kinds of things. So very strong, and this is where I briefly want to talk about how you should be assessing armor sets. So we know that our base armor set, Rawhide, gives us 10 armor points plus a few relevant powerful abilities and a couple of affinities for 5 resources. For 9 resources and a portion of an endeavour, we get leather armour, which has less potent abilities. Really only the leather boots is actually potent, the other 2 are just utility defensive abilities. But you do get 20 armour points. So what we see is around 10 resources should be giving you something in the ballpark of the value of 20 armour points. It's okay if it's giving less if you're benefiting in other ways for specific synergies and things, but this is now our yardstick that we compare any armour coming up to. Like leather armour, as I said, is the start of the mid-game. Okay, let's look at our weapon types. Okay, we're going to begin with whip. So, when you win with whip, instead of moving the top card of the AI deck into the wound stack, you may move the top card of the AI discard pile into the wound stack once per attack. This is a very strong piece of AI control, and it's a big argument for why you would want to be using whips, along with how whips provide you with protection on the hunt. So what's incredible about this is usually if a monster does a move, because you've drawn the AI card, it's likely or possibly going to do that move again when you get on the second pass through their deck, because you, of course, once you've been all the way through the deck, once they're going to reshuffle their AI cards, and you know exactly what moves they have in their repertoire. But this here, this lets you just go, oh, that is a really scary move. I don't want to deal with that. So you can, when you get your wound, just go, let's get rid of this instead, so we don't have to deal with it again because it's awful. To provide a core game example, Deja Vu. Deja Vu from the Phoenix is a horrific card that can cause party wipes. And if it's in the discard pile, being able to just, on the top of the discard pile, just being able to crack the whip and make the bird forget how to do Deja Vu is very good. The mastery is incredibly basic. Plus 5 strength when attacking with a whip. That actually helps all the whips quite a lot, because whips typically have less strength than they should do. The Rawhide whip, for example, really should be a 2 strength whip. The Hunter's whip should really be a 4 strength for the costs that you pay. Oh, I didn't mention, the costs on the whip are down here, 2 leather and a bone. It's actually kind of steep, but if you like whips, then you're going to have to put up with being, paying the extra price and sometimes not quite having the best weapon you could have. I'm still going to use whips. I love whips, but let's look at the issue here. So this is it. This is almost the entire progression in the core. Well, this is the entire progression in the core game, except this upgrades. And this is almost the entire progression of whips in the entire first generation. There's only one other whip, it's the Silk Whip, it's an alternative. So, your Hunter Whip is the middle of the two, and I'm of the opinion that you would consider running a Rawhide Whip and a Hunter Whip together to give on a whip tank to give you some choice. But if you are not looking to do that, you can either just take a Rawhide Whip for a cheap way of dealing with nasty hunt events that can be cancelled or mitigated somewhat with the use of a whip, or if you're going to be attacking and your slots are a concern, Hunter Whip. I still really wish that this whip had a red affinity instead of one of these 2 blues. That would help an awful lot. Okay, let's look at a more powerful proficiency then, shall we? Shield! Actually, let's defocus for this. So, shield. Specialisation. When there's a shield in your gear grid, you're no longer knocked down after a collision with a monster because you brace yourself with a shield. That's a nice little bonus, but it's not what you're training shield for. You're training shield for this second ability. While a shield is in your gear grid, add 1 armour points to all hit locations. So that makes the round leather shield 2 armour. It makes the beacon shield 3 armour. Or, to be more precise, the round leather shield goes from giving you 5 armour points to your survivor to giving you a total of 10. It's a big, big increase. Shields also have a very interesting mastery. Here it is. When a shield master is adjacent to a survivor that is targeted by a monster, they can swap spaces on the board with the survivor and become the target instead. The master must have a shield to perform this. That means you can set up a very fragile DPS, damage per swing, damage dealer, right next to the tank in the face of the monster and just go ham, knowing that if they get targeted, you can have your shield master just step in and take the hit. There's a lot of synergy in particular with spear. Spear and shield together make a little phalanx type block thing. The shield is at the front and the spear is behind. Poke, poke, poke. And the shield puts a priority target onto. Sorry, the spear puts the priority target onto the shield master, and then the shield master can also protect the spear in other situations, or can protect other people adjacent. You can literally run a T-shape where you go shield master in the middle, damage dealer left, damage dealer right, spear behind, and against a 9 square monster, that's actually a very effective formation, and very, very aggressive. So that's great. Shields, they have good progression in the core game. You have the leather shield, which there's only 3 in the game, in the simulator, so imagine it's there. We've already looked at it. Then you can progress onto the scrap shield, which is actually a decent shield for trying to level up, and it gives a little bit of armor points, but it has the problem that it's not a beacon shield, so it's always a secondary shield, and it comes from the blacksmith, same as the beacon shield. The beacon shield is just really good profile, so great for training shield. Has more armor points, has block 2, and this also upgrades in People of the Lantern, so we'll talk more about these two when we get to blacksmith, but you just go boom and boom. You normally skip scrap shield, but some builds may use it. Okay, wow, we got through this pretty quickly, but it's not surprising. Leatherworker has probably the least things on it. It's so basic, but basic doesn't mean weak. So let's look at 2 builds that tend to be, these are like meta definers. So our first one here, there we go. This is the Zanbato tank. This is what used to be the dominant build in the mid game in Kingdom Death before 1.6 happened, before the legendary card update. The reason for the change is originally the Zanbato was still in the weapon crafter, but it was effectively a white lion weapon. It used a great cat bone and a hide to craft it. That meant that, unfortunately, one of the memes of how do I get good at Kingdom Death is kill white lion, craft Zanbato. And you could craft so many Zanbatos that you would just swing them around, not even caring that they were frail, because you're like, well, I've got another Zanbato at home, so that's fine. These days, you need a perfect bone to craft a Zanbato. If you get a perfect bone, you should craft a Zanbato, but you may not always be able to do so. We can see why this is such a defining build for the mid game, and it's because it's just sort of it's pre-built for you. We've got active Zanbato, we've got active boots, active monster grease on the double, so +2 evasion, and we've got everything. So we can stand on the front line, defend with our shield, and even put good damage in when required with the Zanbato. And Devastating 1 is a fantastic ability for a survivor who's trying to preserve their armor points, because it means that they can hit and double the effectiveness of their wound. So solid build. But if you're unable to get a Zanbato, there is an alternative frontline mid-game tank, and it is the Counterweighted Axe tank. So we can see here just how baked in the synergies are with leather, and why the round leather shield is sort of technically not, but it is sort of the sixth piece of leather armor, because again, we've got active leather boots, active monster grease, and we've got a active counterweighted axe. The counterweighted axe has a good profile for the mid game and a very strong ability. Automatic wounds are your like holy grail unicorn of the game, because they skip drawing hit locations, so you don't have to worry about reactions and you don't have to worry about the trap card. So I'll talk more about the counterweighted axe in the weapon crafter video, but this is the second one. I also showcased a bruiser build in the stone circle video, so you can look at that if you want to see a more aggressive form. But the truth is, you can do whatever you like with leather. It's so unbelievably generic that you could just go, well, I'm not going to run monster grease and I'm not going to run a round leather shield. I'm going to do a deadly build and I'm just going to use leather armor to help provide me with more armor points. It's absolutely fine. This is such a malleable platform for whatever you desire. So just it's only 9 resources, so it's really good. Yeah, right. So that's all I have to say about the Leatherworker. It's really just like amazing armor set that's very cheap. One of the best weapons in the game in the round leather shield, and a solid whip for people who want to play whips, which I really like. But if you're just looking for a whip for the hunt, you should probably just make a rawhide whip because it's a lot cheaper. There we go. Leather. Solves all your problems. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe. All helps. I would also at this point like to say a big thank you to Adam Poots, who actually he sorted me out with a full key for the KDM simulator, and this is like the first recording I've made since that happened, so I really appreciate it. It's gonna mean I can do these videos every time something gets updated. I can do it straight away. I'm considering putting a few shorts out of showcasing the opening of the expansion boxes. Let me know if you're interested in that in the comments, because they won't be long, and I'm not a huge fan of YouTube shorts overall, but I think that's the best way to just highlight, first of all, how unbelievably extra in the best possible way it is to open one of these boxes, and also like just to highlight, hey, this is what's in this given box. So let me know. You can support me in these videos via my Patreon, that's in the description. You don't have to, you can just watch. I appreciate the views and the likes, and otherwise I'll see you next time, and happy hunting.